This is an extract from a 1-hour interview. To watch the full interview, you can click below to join the Get Gallery Ready course. Until then, enjoy the video. Hi, Adelaide.
Hi, Marine.
And hi to everybody watching. So we're going to talk all about your practice and in particular, how you work with galleries. For anybody who doesn't know Adelaide yet, she's a British Ghanaian multidisciplinary artist. Her work has to do with colonialism, ecology, feminism, identity, and radical joy as well. So thanks, Adelaide, for joining.
Thanks for having me.
You've recently shown with Gagosian. You're about to show your work with Unit Gallery, and you normally show with Shakile and me in Germany. Tell us a bit about your practice before we dive any deeper.
There are different strands to my practice, as you mentioned, and I describe the work as an investigative practice. So I use the work as a means to investigate or research the things that I'm particularly interested in. And sometimes some of the results of the research are embedded in the work. Sometimes they're not. It's just a way of directing my creativity. And sometimes as a result of reading or as a result of studying a particular thing, an idea just pops into my head and I just do it. It's just the way my brain works. It may be because I come from a scientific background in that I studied biology at university. That may be why I'm naturally inclined to work in that sort of way.
It's interesting to mention that your work is very research-led, and I in particularly wanted to speak to you to talk to that maybe worry that certain artists can have, that if you work with a gallery, and we're talking here about commercial galleries, it means that you may have to only create work that you think is going to sell, or you may become a one-trick pony and always have to churn the same type of work over and over again because there's demand for it. And I think in your case, it's about where your curiosity and your creativity lead you. And then the audience and the commercial success follow as a byproduct.
My main gallery is Sakile and me, who are based in Germany. I suppose I'm lucky in the fact that Sakile, who is one of the directors, she owns the gallery with her husband, Daniel. But Sakile comes from a research background, so she appreciates the fact that I like to research things. And on the other side of things, because that relationship is so loose and respectful, I'm able to work with lots of other galleries or entities. And yeah, I suppose all of that gives me the freedom to do what I want.
A lot of the artists who will be watching this, and certainly a lot of the artists who we mentor, there'll be lots of different barriers in their way. It may be geographical. You may be outside of London or outside of a major art world hub, and therefore it may be practically more difficult to go to these events and network with people. But it may also be barriers that are within your body and your mind, that you're going through chronic pain, that you're going through any sort of mental health thing or a learning disability. And there are a lot of people who feel like they're alone with this. But I think it's important to acknowledge that a lot of artists deal with those barriers. So I'd be interested to hear you touch a bit more upon that.
Yeah, everything that you just said. There have been a lot of challenges. I've had the physical health issue. I've had mental health stuff relating to quite severe depression as a direct consequence of being in pain all the time. There have been financial barriers, being so broke at times where I was literally eating every other day. There have been also challenges with the family, with my family, with one of my younger sisters who had quite a serious car accident in 2006 and all of the ramifications of that, looking after her. So there've been a lot of challenges, everything from financial, mental health, family, physical health. And in all of that, there were times when I felt alone. There were times when I wanted to give up, but I think the thing that I held on to was just the work. It was just the work. Even in times when I couldn't even afford to buy materials, I just would focus on drawing, a pencil and a paper. And in the times when I felt like I was alone, I really wasn't alone. There was always someone that I could reach out to and just have a conversation with. And in having those conversations, release some of the burden. As soon as you open your mouth and speak about something, it feels less. It doesn't mean that the problem has suddenly gone, but it feels less, right? I also have mentors who, even if I'm not necessarily talking to them about the personal stuff, being able to go to them and talk to them about the work, my mind is focusing on something that takes it away from the issues. The deeper I delve into that stuff, the more intellectually challenged and satisfied I feel, which makes me feel like there's something bigger and more important than the problems that I'm having, which puts them into perspective, which makes it easier to deal with. That doesn't mean that they're gone, just changes my focus, my way of thinking about that particular issue. One of my favorite sayings, if not the number one, is luck is where preparation meets opportunity. So there's no way that I would have been able to take advantage of any of the opportunities that have come my way if I hadn't been prepared, if I wasn't gallery ready. And that only happens through consistent practice, consistently making the work, and actually consistently making the work despite whatever is going on in the world and around me is what grounds me and makes me feel better about all of those things. So if you're an artist, lean on that. Even in the dark times, the art, the work is a thing that you should always just go back to. It's something that you're doing for yourself. And every single thing that I make, it feeds my soul. Do you know what I mean?
So what was the opportunity for you, and what do you think is the opportunity for artists in working with galleries?
The opportunity for me in working with galleries is number one, sales. We all have to eat, right? And I'm lucky enough at the moment that most of my income comes from sales. And the galleries have access to collectors and wider networks of institutions, people who buy art that as an individual artist, unless you're born into a family who has those kinds of connections, most people don't have those kinds of connections. So yeah, that's the first thing, sales. And then after that, it's the relationships, the opportunity to have relationships that can last a lifetime with other artists, with other curators, sometimes with writers, it depending on the kind of gallery you're working with and if they bring someone in to write something about the work. Yeah, those are the main things for me.
On the one hand, obviously the sales and the income, but also not forgetting that when you get a sale, it's creating a new relationship with a collector or a buyer who's going to love and cherish your work. Yes, 100%, we all need to pay our bills. And that's a critical thing in working with a commercial gallery. But there's also that validation of knowing, hey, somebody loved it enough to buy it. But also the other aspect, I think, is there's the commercial end and there's the critical end of literal critics or journalists or writers, but also curators, and those people being exposed to your work, not necessarily the people who buy, but the people who are the thought leaders or the industry experts who know a lot of people and who have a lot of influence. Your work being in front of them has inherent value.
With regards to collectors, there are a few very powerful collectors who can make a massive difference to your career. Certain galleries have access to those kinds of collectors. Ultimately, everything comes back to relationships, and a collector of that kind of stature can end up loaning your work to a museum or an institution, or even donating your work to a museum or institution. And that kind of thing has massive impact in terms of your career, in terms of how you're perceived in the art world, how seriously you're taken, where your career ends up going, whether or not you become a part of the canon, if that's what you want. All of those things, some collectors have that kind of power. So it's not just about them buying your work. And also some collectors have what are seen as really important collections as well. So it's seen as a big deal to be in certain collections. And once you get in certain collections, that also then attracts the eyes of other really important collectors. And it just keeps on building and building. And next thing you're having institutional exhibitions and that kind of thing. And then your prices start going up. Yeah, collectors can be exceptionally powerful.
Thank you for watching this clip from our interview. To watch the full 1 hour interview and get practical advice to work with galleries, then click the link below and join the Get Gallery Ready course. This in-depth course for artists includes 5 sessions covering everything you need to know about galleries, 5 interviews with artists sharing their top tips with you, and 5 interviews with gallery directors so you can hear directly what they look for, how to approach them, how to get represented by a gallery, and so much more. Until then, we hope you enjoyed this video and you can click below to learn more and get started.